What made you realize your neighbor was actually dangerous? I ran a background check after he offered to watch my teenage daughter while I was out of town and discovered he was a registered predator hiding his identity. My neighbor Jim had always seemed like the perfect guy. Friendly waves every morning, always offered to help with yard work, brought in our packages when we traveled, always polite to my 16-year-old daughter Sarah, never crossed any boundaries or made us uncomfortable. Maybe that was the problem. Jim had moved in 6 months ago, claiming he was divorced and starting fresh. Nice guy, mid-40s, worked from home doing consulting, always available to chat, knew everyone's schedules, made an effort to befriend all the families on our street. The red flag moment came when I mentioned taking a weekend business trip. You know, Sarah shouldn't be alone at 16. I'd be happy to check on her, make sure she's safe. I've raised kids before. I decided to do some research first. Something felt off about Jim's story. He claimed to be divorced, but I'd never seen any evidence of a previous family. No photos, no kids visiting, no mention of an ex-wife. For someone starting fresh, he seemed to have no past at all. The next day, I ran a basic background check online using his full name from the mailbox. The results made my blood run cold. Jim Morrison wasn't his real name. His actual name was James Morton, and he was a level 3 registered sex offender who'd been convicted of aggravated sexual assault of a minor. But it got worse. I found court records showing he'd been required to register his address changes with local police. According to the database, James Morton was supposed to be living 2 states away. Jim Morrison didn't exist in any official records. Over the next week, I quietly investigated more. I discovered Jim had been specifically targeting neighborhoods with teenage girls. His pattern was always the same: move in under a false name, befriend families, gain trust, then volunteer to help with the kids. The breaking point came when I found online posts he'd made about our neighborhood. He'd been documenting which houses had teenage daughters, their schedules when parents worked late. I decided to set a trap. I told Jim I'd decided to take him up on his offer. That business trip came up again. "Would you mind checking on Sarah Friday night? She gets nervous alone." His reaction was too eager. "Of course. I'll make sure she's completely safe. Don't worry about a thing." Instead of leaving town, I parked around the corner and called the police. I explained the situation and showed them my research. They agreed to stake out the house. Friday evening, Jim showed up at 8 p.m. with a toolbox, claiming he wanted to check the locks while I was away. Sarah knew the plan and stayed with friends. The officers watched him case the house for 20 minutes before approaching. "Excuse me, sir, could we see some identification?" Jim froze completely, started stammering about being a helpful neighbor. "Your real identification, James Morton." Turns out Jim had violated multiple terms of his registration by using a false identity and living near schools. The police found detailed files in his house about every teenage girl in a 6-block radius. He tried claiming he was just being friendly, that I was paranoid, but the evidence in his house told a different story. Helpful neighbors don't usually research their targets this thoroughly, the detective said. Turns out this was his 3rd time violating registration requirements. He'd been doing this pattern in different states for years. Jim was arrested that night and sentenced to 5 years for violation of registration requirements and intent to commit a felony. The whole neighborhood learned about background checks that day. Sarah now knows to trust her instincts when adults are too eager to help.